It seems my husband has been possessed by a devil. I'm giving this house to Susan. If you oppose me, we're getting a divorce. He's planning to give our house, which is under my name, to our eldest son's wife?
Old hag, get out of here ASAP.
The wife who got my husband on her side. I'm changing it to my name, LOL. I can handle a monthly mortgage of about $1,800 easily. It seems my eldest son has joined her. Well, I don't have any attachment to this filthy house anymore. I'll move out then. I will make sure all three of you go to hell. Prepare yourselves. My name is Grace, and I'm 60. I work in an executive position in a major corporation. I live with my husband, Robert, who is 2 years younger. Last year, we renovated our house for our future. Our house was built by my father, and it's quite old. For that reason, it was really worn out, and we wanted to make it easier to live in as we approach our old age. However, because of our age, the loan is a bit high at $1,800. However, it's not an amount we can't afford, and I was told that the loan would be approved since I work in an executive position at a major company. By the way, Robert is a manager at a small restaurant, and his income is less than mine, so apparently it's easier for me to get a loan. It would be difficult for me to keep paying off the loan with my income. It was originally your father's house, and now it's in your name. I feel bad, but could you pay the entire amount? I'll make up for it by contributing more to our living expenses. We discussed this together and decided to renovate. Our home has become so beautiful and comfortable that it's almost unrecognizable. I was so happy that by renovating the house where I had spent my childhood, I could continue to live there forever. That's what I thought. I never thought the day when I would have to leave this house would come. One day, my smartphone vibrates. I'm getting married. I was told this by my eldest son, Jack, over the phone. Jack is 31 years old and a section chief at a major company. Our eldest son has always been diligent, dedicating himself to studying and club activities. He's also very dedicated to his work after being an adult. Because of that, I hadn't heard any rumors about his love life. I was really curious about the woman that Jack was thinking of marrying. Indeed, very intriguing. What kind of woman could she be? If Jack likes her, she must be wonderful. But I wonder if she's scheming something, taking advantage of Jack's lack of dating experience. I was half excited, half anxious about the woman our son would be bringing home for the first time. Then came the day of meeting her. A neat woman with brown hair and wearing a white chiffon dress showed up. I'm Susan, nice to meet you. She had very good manners and a neat appearance, making a great first impression. Nice to meet you, Dad, Mom. Showing her clean white teeth, she smiled at us. I can entrust Jack to her. That's what I was thinking, and Robert also seemed to feel the same way, smiling broadly. She's a good girl, as Robert murmured quietly. I'm very pleased to hear that from you, sir. I'm looking forward to getting along with you, she said, clutching Robert's hand and looking into his eyes. What on earth is she doing? Surprised by her close distance, I pulled back a bit. Jack seemed surprised too, but Robert didn't seem bothered. I wasn't jealous, but it was not a pleasant feeling. What are you doing? Thinking it wasn't good for Jack, I addressed Susan. Then, in a flustered manner, she said, Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that on our first meeting. I'm really sorry. And immediately let go of Robert's hand. I often hear from everyone that I don't understand personal space. I don't mean any harm, I just end up doing it. I'm really sorry. She doesn't seem like a bad person. But I couldn't hide my surprise at her behavior even though my first impression was good. But Jack was head over heels for her. Also for her behavior. You know, Susan may not understand personal space, but I think that's one of her good points. She approached me even though I'm shy and have trouble approaching women. That's why I'm able to be in a relationship with Susan and even considering marrying her. I didn't expect the usual introverted Jack to change this much due to Susan's behavior. I entrust Jack to you. I had a lot of speculation, but I recognize she's a good person. I approved their marriage. And then things moved quickly and they got married a few weeks later. I wish them all the happiness from the bottom of my heart. Half a year after their marriage, one day. I'm home, huh? When I got home from work, I saw a woman's shoes at the entrance. In the living room, there was Susan. Welcome back, mother-in-law. Looking at the table, there was lots of empty cans and bottles of booze. It seemed they had been drinking. What is this? Why were they having a drinking party without Jack? Being curious, I asked. Well, when I was coming back home from work, I bumped into Susan. She said she wanted to get along with me better, so we decided to have a drink. But I'm broke before payday, so I suggested we drink at home. Why have a drinking party at home? It would be better if Jack was also there, and I didn't want to intrude on the newlyweds. They could have just drank at Jack and Susan's place. I asked while tilting my head.
It would have been fine at our place, but this house is so beautiful. And right now, our place is a mess.
Susan, who wasn't pronouncing words properly. I was surprised because she usually speaks politely, but she started speaking casually, probably because she was drinking. But why were they drinking together? Why didn't you invite Jack? For a daughter-in-law to come to her in-law's house alone, and to come for drinks while they're newlyweds, I think it's a little out of the ordinary. From the moment I saw the two of them, I had been looking for Jack.
Jack is, he's so caught up in the busy season at work, and I have been working overtime nonstop. That's why I'm just so lonely.
Susan starts to cry as she says this. Shush now, Susan, it's not your fault. The one to blame is Jack for leaving his newlywed wife alone. Robert begins to console her, stroking her hair.
Oh, daddy-in-law.
What a bizarre scene. It's rather nauseating. Hey, Robert, Susan is your daughter-in-law. It's disrespectful to Jack. You shouldn't act like this. I scold Robert for his inappropriate behavior, but then...
Don't scold daddy-in-law, please.
Susan stands up for Robert. What? Her response was so absurd I couldn't help but blurt out my confusion. I had a lot to say, but after a tiring day at work, I couldn't be bothered. I'm going to take a bath. Please clean up after. I sigh as I head to the bathroom to escape. Then I call Jack to explain the situation. He says he'll stop working and come to pick Susan up right away. I see Susan as a bit eccentric, but Jack must really love her to be willing to leave work and come get her. But it might be a bit challenging to live with her after marriage. I may not be the best mother-in-law, but once Jack arrives, I've decided to offer him some advice on married life. Time flies as I soak in the tub, lost in thought. Feeling a bit lightheaded, I head to the living room, where I find Jack has arrived to pick up Susan. Or so I thought. But despite having driven here, he's drinking. Jack, you drove here, right? You're not supposed to drink. I question him, and he cheerfully replies in a tipsy state. No, Susan said she wanted to drink, so I decided to stay the night. I'm glad my son will be staying over. But the daughter-in-law who's left a bad impression is here too, and all of a sudden, I'm honestly baffled. But Jack's already been drinking. I can give you guys a lift. I really don't want the daughter-in-law to stay over. Despite being tired, I propose to drive them home, but then... No, I feel bad for you. You must be tired too. How about you join us for a drink? Jack suggests with an easygoing smile. I can't say anything more. Huh? At this moment, something felt off. Suddenly, Susan cracked a mischievous smile. Yes, indeed. It was as if she was laughing at my bewildered state. It's just my imagination, right? I tried to convince myself it was just a misunderstanding, but in fact, her incredibly terrific plan had already begun at that point. The next day, Susan kept apologizing for her blunder.
I'm truly sorry,
she said and left, and I felt relieved as if a storm had passed. Then that day when I got home, Susan was there again. There was no sign of Jack. I was filled with a sense of despair, but the situation was different from the day before.
I'm sorry to disturb you again, but I really wanted to apologize, she said, offering me some sweets.
I guess I got carried away. My bad. Robert seemed remorseful. It was a bit annoying, but they seemed to be reflecting, so I should let it go this time. I forgave them. Thank you. And maybe because Susan felt quite awkward about the whole thing, she stopped coming over. Frankly, I didn't want to deal with her much, so I was grateful for the outcome. So I thought. Until one day. Robert came to me with a serious face, saying he had something to talk about. As I was wondering what it was and stayed in the living room, Jack and Susan came home. It's been a while. I greeted them, but for some reason, I was ignored. Did they not hear me? As I was wondering, Robert suddenly shouted, I'm giving this house to Susan. If you object, We're getting a divorce. What? As I thought he was suddenly blabbering about he's giving the house to Susan? I didn't understand. As I was taken aback,
Mother-in-law, please leave.
Susan said that. What? What does that mean? I was in chaos. Hold on, what do you mean you're giving the house to Susan? When I questioned, Robert answered, You've been bullying Susan all this time, doing such a stupid thing. Bullying? Baseless. That's impossible. But no matter how much I argued, Robert wouldn't listen. Shut up, she said so. That's why she was crying that she couldn't come home until now. Robert kept yelling, and Susan was shedding tears. Why did it come to this? Then Jack snapped, as if to join in. I didn't think my mother would do something like that. This is seriously messed up. The more I denied it, the angrier the two of them got, and Susan was overflowing with tears. That's why I'm divorcing you. Get out now. I'm staying here with the two of them. Why on earth should I have to give my house to Susan? When I ask, he retorts, Because Susan is deeply hurt. Normally we should be demanding compensation, but I think there's a better way. To take away your precious house and give it to Susan. That way, it should inflict appropriate damage on you, right? I didn't bully her. Why do I have to be hurt? Besides, there's no way Susan, who quit her job when she got married, can pay an $1,800 loan. When I say that, he replies, Don't worry, the title will be in Jack's name. With Jack's salary and previous employer, we can immediately change the title. Even so, since the loan is in place, changing the title is basically difficult. If it were that easy to change the loan, anyone could buy a house. I don't think the bank will approve it. When I say that, Robert says, You work for a big corporation, and so does Jack, so it should be okay. Plus, one of my friends works at the bank where you have your loan. I think we can talk to him and everything will be okay. It's unclear where such confidence came from. That's right, an $1,800 loan is no big deal, LOL. Jack, brimming with confidence, led by Robert's words. It has become a real matter that I will have to hand over the house. I've said it over and over, I haven't bullied her, so I absolutely won't give up the house. When I object, they both blow up again. Ugh, this is too much. As I'm getting fed up, Susan, who has been crying the whole time, speaks up.
Mother-in-law, for the sake of this child, please.
Susan pleads, stroking her belly. No way. Mom, Susan is pregnant. If she remains as mentally unstable, she might have a miscarriage, right? So please, give in. She announces her pregnancy here. Stress is indeed a big enemy during pregnancy, but that doesn't mean I should give up my house because of some unfounded accusations. I remain perplexed. Just leave me alone for a bit. I leave the scene and go to the bedroom. Bullying? Have I unknowingly been horrible to Susan? As I'm lying on the bed riddled with worry. What's this? There's a strand of brown hair on the bed. Both Robert's and my hair are black. There's no way a strand of brown hair could fall. Wait, has there been an affair? On top of the early argument, now this awful truth is revealed. My mind is on the verge of exploding. I don't even know what's going on anymore. I cry myself to sleep, and when I wake up, it's night. As I try to enter the living room, I could hear voices. It seems that Jack and Susan aren't back home yet. I wish I could have a drink too. You can't, you're pregnant, remember? Robert and Susan, full of enthusiasm. I found no chance to intervene. The mysterious accusation of Susan left me in despair. As I remained unable to enter the living room, suddenly I heard the sound of an intimate encounter. Oh, Susan, I love you.
Stop it, Robert. Jack and my mother-in-law will find out, you know.
Huh? What the hell are Robert and Susan doing? What on earth is happening here? Don't worry, Jack is passed out drunk, and Grace hasn't come out of her room for a while. She's probably sleeping already.
LOL, is she sulking? LOL, too funny, LOL.
The brown hair probably belonged to Susan. It's disgusting. What were these two doing on the bed I was sleeping in until just a few moments ago? I feel nauseous. I bet they kicked me out and planned to have a good time with Susan, hidden from Jack. My home, a venue for their illicit affair. Fine. I'll let go of this disgusting home. But you will see consequences. The next morning, I acted as if I'd been asleep in my room and nothing happened in front of the three. Actually, I didn't want to sleep in that bed anymore, and I was too shocked to get any sleep. Finally handing over the house. When I said, I've decided to hand over the house, everyone broke into a grin. Great, let's get the transfer of ownership done. I'm sure I can get a loan approved in no time. Jack is quite excited. This kid probably doesn't know anything. It made me sad, but I won't tell the truth to a son who doesn't listen to his mother and is completely controlled by his wife. Not yet. And then days of hustle and bustle followed with divorce procedures and transfer of ownership. It was quite tough, but somehow we managed to change the ownership. From today, it's no longer your house, Robert cheered.
Get out of here, old lady, LOL,
Susan whispered into my ear. It pissed me off. I'll leave. You don't have to tell me. Letting go of the house I lived in all my life, it was sad, but had become a place of infidelity. No regrets left. From now on, I'll mess with these three and their odd relationship. You all will be sorry for what you did. About a month after I moved out, finally I'm ready. I returned to my former home. When I rang the doorbell, what does a stranger want here? Even after such a long time, Robert was furious. Can I come in? I have something to say, I assertively requested. Why should I let you in my house? Robert is reluctant to let me in. I have something important to say. It's also for Susan's sake. Something important for Susie? As soon as I mentioned her name, he let me in without hesitation. Honestly, I didn't want to say her name because it made me feel sick, but I knew Robert was soft for her, so I played that card. An outsider is here. An outsider? Sure, we're divorced and hence strangers now, but is that the right way to say it? I was irritated by Robert's reaction. What do you want after all this time? The three of them are on high alert. I want you to look at this. What is this? I laid out the photos. The photos are of Robert and Susan on a date. Actually, since we divorced, I had hired a private investigator to tail them. As a result, I obtained photos of them on a date. Just wait a minute. What? Jack is shocked. Then, what are these photos supposed to mean? We're a close father-in-law and daughter-in-law. Nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah, what do you want taking these nonsensical photos?
Two of them insist they're just close. Well then, how about this? I took out my smartphone and played a recording.
I really do love Susan. Hey, if you speak so loudly, Jack and mother-in-law will wake up.
It's a recording of Robert and Susan's voices and their indistinct chatter. What? Actually, the day I discovered the relationship, I had recorded their conversation. No, this is a misunderstanding. Robert desperately tried to explain. What misunderstanding? This is clearly not okay. As expected, Jack was furious. She kept her head down. I decided to add fuel to the fire. Listen, I hate to ask, but who's really the father of that baby in your belly? Jack's face went pale instantly. Do you mean it's with Dad?
No way. My father-in-law was pulling it out every time.
Oh, she dug her own grave.
You just admitted it, didn't you? You just admitted it.
The three of them shouted. Robert and Jack ended up wrestling each other. Ouch! She seemed to have had a cramp in her stomach due to the fight, interrupting their scuffle. Then I immediately said, I've been saying this all along, haven't I? I haven't been bullying Susan. Could it be that you were lying just to drive me away? To make Jack believe? Jack was taken aback. You're kidding. What the hell? That's just messed up. With you guys, and I couldn't trust my own mom. Jack, who couldn't trust his mother and listened to the wicked woman, seemed to be blaming himself. Now that you understand all this, spill everything. Jack shouted angrily at the two of them. They hesitated to confess, but then said, We have enough evidence here. Are we going to court? The word court triggered them, and they finally began to talk. Apparently, at first, she seemed to have loved Jack, but when they came to our newly renovated and beautiful home for their marriage proposal, she wanted a house like ours. My parents' house was pretty rundown, and I was jealous of a beautiful house like this. The interior was quite nice too, she explained while shedding tears. The woman who wanted a house seemed to have planned to win over Robert on the day of the marriage proposal. So she intentionally ambushed Robert after his work without inviting Jack and drank at home. For several months that Jack did not come home, she nurtured love with Robert and seemed to have planned to push me out. Then you should have proposed to live together from the beginning. When I said that, she paused and then answered, I have a bad image of a mother-in-law. My mom and grandma at home fought every day because grandma was bullying my mom. I didn't want to live with a mother-in-law. The only way to live comfortably in a beautiful house was to get the mother-in-law to leave. Surely, with such an image, one would not want to live with a mother-in-law, but stealing your father-in-law. However, what did Robert think about this fact? I knew I was being used, but when she came to greet me, held my hand and smiled, Robert, who fell in love, knew he was being used, but he seemed to have done such a thing to abandon me and keep her by his side. You guys, you're the worst. When Jack said so, the two of them lowered their heads and shed tears. After that, Jack naturally divorced. When he checked the DNA of the child born, just in case, it turned out to be Robert's child. I won't pay child support. Saying so, Jack demanded compensation from the two of them. Of course, me too. I can't believe I'm suing my own father for compensation. I patted Jack's head as he sighed in disbelief. That crazy woman had thrown us all for a loop. But the one who's going to regret messing up her life more than any of us is her from here on out. And my hunch was right on the money. Fast forward 2 years, she remarried Robert and decided to stick it out without divorcing, for the sake of their child. She then put the child she had given birth to in daycare so she could work. Oh look, Uncle, came to pick you up today. Apparently, she's been getting the side eye from other moms at the daycare. The kids seem to be getting along fine, but she's feeling down because she can't make any mom friends. And when she tried to explain her divorce and remarriage to Robert to her own parents, they were furious, and their anger was directed at Robert. She's been estranged from them ever since. All of this is her own doing. And as for that house, Jack is living there alone. I wanted to sell it, but that would be too harsh on Mom. After all, this is the house where she's been living since she was born, right? A house full of memories. I just can't sell it. I told him I didn't care and that the house was creepy after all that, but he was so guilt-ridden that he couldn't sell it. And maybe because I've been saying that house gives me the creeps too much, he had it professionally cleaned and he threw out all of Robert and Susan's belongings. And Jack, who did all that for me, said, "Even though it was because of that woman, I did something terrible to Mom. I know you probably won't forgive me, but please, visit me or come to the house on a whim and let me show you some devotion." And with that, he gifted me with a ticket for a hot springs trip. Jack has definitely shown remorse. I can't forgive him yet, but I think I'll try to work towards rebuilding our parent-child relationship as it once was.
I wonder if it's not a thief. I frowned at the men's and women's shoes visible at the entrance. Our house should be empty, with neither my husband nor I present. Yet, there's a presence of someone, both at the entrance and in the bathroom. The vulgar voice coming from the bathroom made it clear someone was having a good time. It's common for husbands to call their mistresses over when their wives are out, but that's impossible. This voice, could it be? My husband, standing next to me, is staring at the bathroom with a pale face. My name is Taylor. I've been married to Kevin for 2 years. Being a dual-income couple, we don't have children yet. However, I believe we lead a peaceful and affectionate life, going out or traveling on our days off. Fortunately, neither our parents nor our in-laws rush us about having children. In fact, our parents and in-laws live nearby, allowing us to have a good relationship where we can gather for family dinners. The slightly old but magnificent house we rented was introduced to us by our in-laws. The dinner parties, which happen once a month, if at all, are mostly held at our place. The standard is for Mom and me to cook, enjoying the evening with Dad's favorite wine and the food brought by our in-laws. That day, Mom had come over from the morning to prepare for the dinner party, but the usually cheerful Mom seemed somewhat gloomy, cutting the ingredients and expressing concern. "Do we really need this much? We might not be able to finish it all." She started saying things she wouldn't usually say. "Mom, what's wrong? We've only prepared the usual amount for today." When I dared to ask, Mom looked at me surprised, and then laughed it off. "I'm sorry, dear. It's just that Dad has been eating less lately, and I'm worried." "Really? Is Dad not feeling well?" Dad has been an independent businessman since his youth, the so-called entrepreneur. Dad has always been focused on work since I was a child, and I hardly have any memories of him playing with me on his days off. Even so, as his daughter, it worries me to think that he might have worked himself sick. Mom seemed hesitant to say it, but perhaps thinking it cruel to worry me unnecessarily, she finally opened up. "It's not an illness. Dad is perfectly healthy. But lately, he's been cold, finding fault with dinner, or commenting on how plain my clothes are." "What's that about? That's terrible, saying such things to Mom, who's always been the backbone of our home." "I'm fine. Maybe Dad is just a bit tired from starting a new business." Mom insisted she was okay. The conversation drifted off, and though concerned, I went back to cooking. Today, we planned to lay out a lavish spread, including Dad's favorite steak and pie, as a gesture of support for his new business venture. As for what Kevin was doing, he's the type who can't rest until every nook and cranny is clean, given his fondness for cleanliness. Even if it's just family, he meticulously cleans the entrance and living room whenever we have guests. As I began to tidy up the planters in the garden, Dad, my mother-in-law Sarah, and my father-in-law Sean gathered around. "Taylor, can I have a moment?" "Yes, Sarah?" This happened as I was checking the temperature of the pan to cook the steak. Sarah, who appeared in the kitchen, had a grim expression for some reason. She silently handed me a box that seemed to be a gift, and puzzled, I accepted it. To my surprise, it bore the logo of a restaurant famous for its steaks. Indicating she had gone out of her way to bring it, upon opening the lid, I found it contained thick, high-quality steaks, their savory aroma whetting the appetite. It seemed we had inadvertently prepared the same dish. However, I thought it would be easy enough to just cook fewer steaks. After all, it wasn't the first time our gifts had coincidentally matched. "Wow, did you go out of your way to buy this? We heard it was a celebration, but you could have told us about the steaks. This is awkward. Can we just serve the gift steaks today?" "But you have Kevin, and you two can eat it, right? We're not young anymore, and too much meat can be hard on our stomachs." I found myself at a loss for words. Everyone is nearing 60. It felt wrong to prepare so much food and have it go to waste, especially after Mom helped with the preparations. "You should have said something. How thoughtless." I was taken aback by Sarah's comment as she left. However, she didn't notice my reaction and exited the kitchen with the steaks. It was my first time being on the receiving end of such a remark. We had never coordinated on gifts before. Even when things ended up being the same, it turned into a source of laughter for us. Moreover, all previous gifts had been sweets or similar items. I felt a bit uneasy, but assumed perhaps the higher-end gift had touched a nerve, so I didn't dwell on it too much. At the dinner party, Dad was thrilled with the steak from the high-end restaurant. Mom seemed to understand my gesture with just a glance, and, without mentioning the steak we had prepared, pretended to be just as delighted. After Sarah, Sean, and Dad had left, Mom skillfully turned the leftover ingredients into beef stew, thankfully before they were cooked. "We could have still had the steak. You both would have gotten tired of steak. This way, you can take it home." Mom took her share in a food storage container. Although I felt bad, the beef stew Mom made was delicious, and Kevin and I quickly finished it off as the flavors melded together. I later heard that despite its deliciousness, Dad complained while eating it, calling it outdated. I was furious, but ended up just holding on to those feelings, unable to resolve them, especially with Mom just giving a wry smile. A few weeks after such a dinner party, I received a sudden message from Kevin, who was supposed to be away on an overnight business trip. It turned out that the business trip was canceled due to the client's circumstances. He said he would be coming home as usual today. Since he was scheduled to be away for 3 days, I had planned to spend some time at my parents' home. However, with him coming home, plans changed, so I had to inform my mom about the change in plans. While finishing up my usual shopping, I met up with Kevin, and we headed home together. "Huh? Did we forget to turn off the lights? I thought I had." When we arrived home, there was a light leaking from the entrance, even though I was sure we had turned everything off before leaving. Concerned about the wasted electricity, I apologized, but Kevin reassured me. "Don't worry about it." He chuckled as he inserted the key into the front door, then fell silent. "What's wrong?" "The front door is unlocked." Kevin's words made me catch my breath, thinking it might be a burglar. I quietly activated my mobile phone and started recording. After I nodded to signal him, Kevin slowly opened the front door. "Whose shoes are these?" In the entryway, there were a pair of men's leather shoes and women's pumps. Kevin's remark made it clear these shoes belonged to someone we didn't know. If these had been Kevin's, and he wasn't here right now, I might think he was cheating by bringing another woman home. But he's right here, next to me. Someone unknown to us was in our house. Sensing my reaction, Kevin grabbed his umbrella, ready to swing it at any moment, and moved forward. Then, we saw the living room light was on, and the food that seemed to have been bought scattered on the table. Strange for a burglar, I thought. Then I heard a voice. Approaching slowly, it became clear the voice was coming from the bathroom. It seems that the person speaking is inside the bathroom. This voice. I can understand why Kevin is truly creeped out. After all, the voice coming from inside is quite vulgar. It's unsettling and infuriating to think that our home could be used without our knowledge. Wondering who on earth could be doing this, I slowly opened the door, and my eyes immediately fell on some discarded clothing. Ah! I couldn't help but let out a sound. There, unmistakably, were Dad's clothes. The large jacket, neatly hung on a hanger, was his favorite he had worn at the dinner party just the other day. The messily discarded shirt and pants were all too familiar. Mom had just left a few hours ago, so there was no way she could be here. It appeared that Dad was bringing another woman into my home for an affair. The realization made me frown involuntarily. Looking up at Kevin, wondering how to explain this to him, I saw him staring with a ghastly pale face at a necklace resting atop the washing machine. I remembered seeing that necklace, and the earrings beside it, quite recently. This can't be. Mom? Kevin's words confirmed the identity of the person inside the bathroom. The ones using our home for their affair were my dad and Sarah. I pulled Kevin, who seemed ready to burst in on them, back to the living room quietly. Moving away from the echoing voices seemed to help him regain some composure. Shouldn't we call your mom and my dad? Kevin suggested, though he seemed confused. What would happen if we brought Mom and Sean here now? I could only foresee a crisis for both families, but I couldn't just ignore what was happening. Vulgar noises were still coming from the bathroom, indicating they might not come out anytime soon. I contacted Mom, and Kevin reached out to Sean right then. It's about Dad. Your dad? He said he was going golfing today and left early in the morning. He won't be back until tonight. Should I tell him to call you when he gets back? It seems that Dad is at home with Sarah. I couldn't bring myself to mention what was happening in the bathroom, but that was enough for Mom to understand the gravity of the situation. In a frightening tone, she said, I'll be right there, and hung up. Less than 10 minutes later, Mom arrived with a pale face, and Sean looking utterly bewildered. The voices had stopped, but they were still inside the bathroom. The sound of the shower was audible, but thankfully, the voices that had filled the hallway earlier were no longer heard. Kevin? What do you mean Sarah is here? Like I said earlier, Mom went on a day trip with friends and won't be back until tonight. Sean asked, full of questions. We had informed him that Dad was with someone, but whether he was confused or unwilling to accept it, he desperately avoided looking towards the bathroom. Feeling sorry for Sean, Kevin signaled to me, and I started recording on my mobile phone again. Kevin made no effort to conceal his approach as he charged into the bathroom. Hey, what the heck are you doing in our house? The bathroom door, hit hard by Kevin, made a dull sound. Screams from Dad and Sarah were followed by the escalating shouts between Dad and Kevin. Kevin, having forced the door open, grumbled with a tone filled with disgust. I grabbed a bath towel and tossed it into the bathroom, wanting to avoid seeing their nudity at all costs. I don't want to see them naked. Behind me, Mom, apparently unable to hold back any longer, pushed past me and stormed into the bathroom. She shoved Kevin and Sarah aside, and with a roar unlike anything I had heard from her before, she forcibly dragged Dad out of the bathroom. Sean, having finally steeled himself, followed Mom into the bathroom and pulled Sarah out. Then, both of them hastily dressed in their hastily discarded clothes, sitting in the hallway with their hair still damp. In just a matter of minutes, all of us, myself included, were panting heavily, our shoulders rising and falling with each breath. Mom's thin voice broke the silence. Why? Her question marked the beginning of Dad and Sarah's explanations. It all began with Sarah's crush on Dad. Given that Dad is a company president, he has connections with some flashy industries. He pays much more attention to his appearance than men his age, and even from my perspective, he's stylish and sophisticated. Sarah reportedly fell for Dad from the moment they met, captivated by his demeanor. Their relationship started to develop during the family meetings organized for mine and Kevin's wedding. Sarah, trying to portray herself as a good woman, eagerly took charge of organizing the dinner parties, gradually becoming closer to Dad. At one of these dinner parties, she finally gathered the courage to confess her feelings. At this point, Kevin, looking nauseous, glared at Sarah, but the problem also involved Dad. He was drawn to Sarah, who adorned herself with bold makeup and flashy clothes, exuding a feminine allure, over Mom, who diligently looked after the home. However, both Dad and Sarah had their own families. Mom often worked at the same company as Dad, and on Dad's days off, Sean usually had a similar schedule. Therefore, they needed a place to meet discreetly. Surprisingly, they chose our home. Kevin and I, having a hobby of taking short trips and staying at hotels, even if they were nearby during long weekends, inadvertently provided them with the opportunity. At that point, Sarah said, "It's not safe to leave the house empty for too long, so I'll check on it." She would say this to confirm our absence, and then contact Dad. Since we were neighbors and shared our plans without any suspicion, our house was unknowingly made available for their use. We never gave them a spare key, thinking it impossible for them to enter, but it seems they secretly took the key during one of the dinner parties and made a copy. Moreover, they were careful to leave no trace of their presence in our house. They brought their own food, took all the trash with them, collected any hairs from the drain after using the bathroom, and wiped down any moisture before leaving. This time, Dad contacted Sarah after finding out that I was going back to my parents' house because of Kevin's business trip. I had only informed Mom about the change in plans, leading to this unexpected encounter. If it hadn't been discovered now, it's hard to tell how long we would have been deceived. Naturally, both were served with divorce papers by their respective partners, faced claims for compensation in the divorce proceedings, and were disowned by Kevin and me. Although Dad and Sarah admitted to their actions initially, they started claiming we were lying and had no evidence later. However, I had recorded everything on my mobile phone, and presenting that as evidence, the divorce proceedings went smoothly with lawyers involved. We used the settlement money to move into an apartment. Kevin, who was a bit of a germaphobe, has developed a complete aversion to the bathroom from that day, refusing to even go near it. I too found it painful to continue living in a house that had been used for their affair, so I was fully in agreement with moving. Now, Mom, having lost all affection for Dad, lives with the two of us. After the divorce was finalized, Sarah seemed quite pleased. She became brazenly defiant, perhaps due to Dad's influence, and accepted the divorce settlement and compensation without much resistance. She moved in with Dad right after the divorce, and they got married, fulfilling their desire to be together. It seemed like a perfect outcome for them, with Sarah becoming the wife of a company president, looking forward to a great life ahead. However, their plans went awry. Dad's new business venture failed, and the company's performance rapidly deteriorated, like a balloon being deflated. Mom, upon hearing this, simply nodded as if to say it was to be expected. Who do you think was covering for Dad all this time? Indeed, it was Mom who had been diligently managing the complaints about Dad's forceful business tactics, both inside and outside the company, quietly supporting the business. She handled a major part of the company's accounting and dealt with clients. Naturally, she resigned from the company at the same time as the divorce. And Dad, far from opposing this, was eager to get rid of her, leading to an inadequate handover. As a result, the company was left with employees dissatisfied with Dad, and many followed Mom's lead and resigned, leading to a shortage of staff. Dad had always thought that supporting him was a wife's duty, so he naturally expected Sarah to take over. However, Sarah, who had always been a housewife, had no understanding of the business and proved to be of no help at all. The exodus of employees, fueled by the president's divorce scandal, became widespread gossip, leading clients to withdraw from Dad's company one after another, citing poor performance. Dad's company couldn't survive even half a year and soon went bankrupt. Their house and assets were seized and burdened with significant debt, including unpaid wages. The two managed to find refuge in a cheap apartment, living a meager existence. Dad, despite his age and wishing for a company that would treat him as a president, couldn't secure a new job. Naturally, his unemployment persisted, and he resorted to gambling as a means of stress relief. Not satisfied with just that, "None of this would have happened if it weren't for the affair. It was Sarah who seduced me." In his rage, he began to resort to violence towards Sarah. Sarah, trying to make ends meet with part-time jobs and desperately supporting Dad, grew disillusioned with him as he sank deeper into gambling addiction and squandered even their living expenses. Unable to bear Dad's repeated verbal abuse, one day she fled the apartment. She ended up at Sean's house. It was the house where Kevin had grown up. Kevin and I happened to be visiting Sean, who had become somewhat reclusive due to the emotional toll of the divorce, and we often checked in on him. Without ringing the doorbell and finding the front door open, we went to see who it was and were met by Sarah. Initially, we didn't recognize her. She looked so different that we thought a stranger, an old woman, was speaking to us. The once beautifully made-up Sarah was nowhere to be seen. Exhausted, Sarah attempted to apologize and seek forgiveness for her past actions, but I could only respond with a bitter expression, thinking it was too convenient. Sean must have been quite shocked. Yet, it seemed he was somewhat swayed by the return of the woman he once loved. While he was pondering how to ask her to leave, Kevin, who was standing next to him, suddenly clutched his mouth and crouched down on the ground. Remembering Sarah's affair in the bathroom, he couldn't hold back and vomited right there. In a panic, Sean and I rushed to bring a trash can and water, and ended up hearing Kevin's cries of rejection towards Sarah from behind his back. Feeling sorry for Kevin and wondering how to resolve the situation, it was Sean who stood up to take action. Sean looked Sarah squarely in the eyes and unequivocally denied any possibility of reconciliation. "Leave!" With firm words, he sent Sarah away. Sarah seemed deeply affected by her own son's vehement rejection, enough to make him physically ill. Without a word, she staggered out the front door and left. Since that incident, Sarah has apparently kept her distance from Sean. There has been no contact from Dad or Sarah since then, so it's safe to assume that our ties with them have been completely severed. Kevin was under the weather for a few days, but has since recovered. Together, we're committed to building a warm and loving home. Mom has shown incredible resilience, quickly finding work, making new friends, and moving on from Dad to enjoy her life. She's planning to rent an apartment for herself once she's saved enough, and I'm hoping she'll choose one close to our home. As for Sean, he seems to have perked up a bit after adopting a stray cat that wandered into his yard. Taking in one cat has apparently led to more cats gathering at his place, and now it's known in the neighborhood as a popular hangout for cats. The ordeal caused by Dad and Sarah involved the whole family in a tumultuous situation. However, those of us who remain have strengthened our bonds and are doing our best to move forward. My name is Alyssa, a 36-year-old housewife juggling part-time work and raising 2 children. While I'm generally content with my day-to-day life, my husband Jackson, a corporate employee of the same age, often prioritizes his mother Shannon over our family. Plans for family outings are frequently altered to accommodate Shannon's requests, such as weeding her garden or accompanying her on shopping trips, even if it means canceling visits to my parents' home. Jackson has even gone as far as changing our child's birthday cake from their chosen character theme to a fruit tart recommended by Shannon, under the guise of it being healthier. Mom says kids need to eat lots of fruit and get their nutrients. His disregard for our children's disappointment leads to frequent confrontations between us. Shannon, for her part, seems to relish Jackson's prioritization of her, deriving a sense of superiority from it, even if it comes at the expense of her grandchildren. Sorry about that, kids. It's Grandma's fault. Yet, her apologies are delivered with a smile. Moreover, Shannon's condescending attitude towards me, coupled with external praise of her as a wonderful mother-in-law, strains our relationship further. Since the passing of my father-in-law, Jackson has indulged Shannon even more, exacerbating her behavior. With our 10th wedding anniversary approaching, I suggested we do something special. Hey, since it's our 10th anniversary this year, how about we go out for a meal at a restaurant? We could ask Shannon or my parents to watch the kids. Has it been 10 years already? Sounds good. Let's book a nice place. What was that restaurant that was featured on TV? We decided to book a reservation at an upscale restaurant we wouldn't normally visit. Jackson was enthusiastic and quickly called Shannon to ask her to watch the kids. Even though it was still nearly 2 months away, I was looking forward to a special anniversary celebration. On the anniversary day, I was entertaining the kids while eagerly anticipating the evening. Jackson, who said he would come straight home after work, hadn't returned. Perhaps he suddenly had to work overtime, but I spoke to him this morning and he shouldn't have forgotten that it was today. These thoughts have been circling in my mind for a while now. After all, there's been no reply from Jackson, despite my attempts to contact him, leaving me completely in the dark about the situation on his end. Moreover, I can't get in touch with Shannon, who was supposed to look after the children, making it difficult to wait for Jackson at the restaurant as planned. As a last resort, I called Jackson's office. Upon requesting to speak with Jackson, I was informed that he had finished work and already left. I thanked them politely and hung up. Wondering why he hadn't responded to my messages if he was already done with work, all I could do now was wait. My daughters, who were aware of tonight's plans, started glancing at the clock, expressing concern about how late it was getting. Indeed, I replied tersely, unable to take my eyes off the ticking clock hands. Even if he had left for work just before I called, he should have been home by now, since he drove to work this morning. I continued waiting for Jackson until just before the reservation time, but I couldn't wait any longer. The reservation was for 7 p.m., and it was nearly time. I decided to call the restaurant to inform them of our delay. Hello? Your party has already been seated? Alone? No, as per your reservation. There are 2 guests. Can you tell me who came? A man who appears to be a company employee and an older woman. Excuse me, but may I ask who's calling? Upon hearing that, I quickly ended the call, saying, "It's a misunderstanding on my part, I'm sorry," and hung up in a rush. An older woman. Could it be? I immediately called Jackson. After several rings, he finally picked up, sounding very annoyed. Yeah? What is it? You've been nagging me. Where are you? You're not already at the restaurant, are you? I am. We're already seated. Mom insisted on dining here, so I decided to have dinner with her tonight. We can celebrate our anniversary at a local restaurant this weekend. You like the pizza there, right? It was indeed Shannon. The audacity of Shannon to join an anniversary dinner, knowing full well what it was, and Jackson's actions in not only allowing this, but also taking my place without any communication, filled me with disgust, not just anger. Especially knowing that I had been looking forward to this for 2 months, and his idea of making it up to me was a meal at a local restaurant. It was a clear indication of the absolute preference Jackson had for Shannon over me. The kids will be disappointed they can't have Grandma's cooking, so make them something they like tonight. I'm counting on you. Wait a second. I tried to stop Jackson as he was about to hang up. Our parents gave us gifts for our 10th anniversary, you know. They said they wanted to hear all about our dinner. Gifts? Your parents always give me stuff I don't like. Just throw away anything that's not cash. Jackson's suggestion to discard gifts filled with everyone's well wishes was appalling. I gave him one last chance, almost as a gesture of mercy. All right, but you might regret this later. You sure it's okay to throw them away? Jackson seemed puzzled by my insinuation, but his stance appeared unchanged. Regret what? I just need the cash. Oh, the food's here, so I'm hanging up. Don't call me again, all right? Bye. I sighed as I hung up the phone, noticing the worried looks from my children. It's gotten a bit late, but who wants to help me with dinner? Their eager hands lifted my spirits slightly. After dinner, I did as Jackson had said, sorting through the anniversary gifts. I kept the cash and prepared to discard the rest, feeling ashamed and sorry for those who had given them to us. It's astonishing that I've managed to stay with Jackson for 10 years. After finishing up and putting the kids to bed, Jackson came home. Don't you think it's terrible to prioritize Shannon, even on our special 10th anniversary day? It was my invitation, and you knew I was looking forward to it. You could have had dinner with Shannon any other day. Yeah, don't sulk. I said I'd take you to the local restaurant next time, right? I'll even pay for half of it. It's not just about that. You said we didn't need the gifts everyone prepared for us because it's our anniversary. You're being persistent. I have work tomorrow. Can you just let me sleep? Jackson completely ignored the issue and went straight to bed after his shower. The next morning, thinking it was my last chance, I tried to talk to Jackson about yesterday's events. Hey, about the celebration gifts. Jackson, visibly annoyed, ignored me and left the living room. Then went off to work without saying anything. Still angry from yesterday, I decided there was nothing more I could do after seeing his attitude. After seeing the children off to school, I received several calls from Jackson within just 3 hours. Thinking he was calling earlier than expected, I answered the phone to hear Jackson start speaking in a rushed manner. Hey, those celebration gifts you mentioned yesterday, who gave them to us? What do you mean? From my parents, friends, and your boss, Mr. Jones. Even the company president gave us something. What? You never mentioned that. I did. I said they were gifts from our parents. You should have made that clearer. Mr. Jones and the company president have been close to my dad for years, and our families have been acquainted since I was a child. They've always treated me like family, and yesterday evening, they even made a special trip to our house to deliver their gifts. The watch the president picked out was really nice, and the wine Mr. Jones brought looked delicious. But it doesn't matter now, does it? You said to throw away anything that wasn't cash, so I did. What have you done, Alyssa? Do you realize what you've caused? Jackson was furious, but I wondered on what grounds he had to complain. I asked you if you were sure, and I tried to talk to you about it last night and again this morning, but you ignored me every time, Jackson. Don't shift the blame. It's your fault for not listening. With that, I hung up the phone. Jackson tried calling back several times, but I ignored all his calls. I might seem petty, but I couldn't contain my anger any longer. When Jackson came home, his footsteps were so loud I could hear him from the entrance. Enough already. Give me the gifts we received, now. Faced with Jackson demanding the return of the celebration gift, I threw them out with this morning's trash, so they've already been collected. There's no way to get them back now. I asked him. Jackson's anger reached a level I had never seen before. He shoved me and stomped on the floor. That's just unbelievable! Can't you differentiate between right and wrong, Alyssa? What's truly unbelievable is knowing it's our anniversary dinner and still going to the restaurant with Shannon, and telling me to throw away gifts without even looking at them is just insensitive. I lashed back at Jackson as he continued to shout. Amidst the heated argument, Jackson kept insisting that I was the one at fault. Just say you threw it away and apologize to them. I've already told everyone at work that, so there's nothing we can do now. Enraged by Jackson's selfish reasoning, I lost my temper. Oh, is that so? Then I'd like them to come here so I can apologize directly. What? What do you mean by that? It was clear he wasn't expecting my response. As the door to the next room opened, Jackson's face showed sheer panic. Mr. Jones and the president, appearing from the other room, left him dumbfounded. After hearing from Jackson, they found my behavior out of character and called me to hear my side of the story. I explained everything, starting with the fact that I had called his office while waiting for Jackson to come home. After hearing my explanation, concerned that a misunderstanding had arisen between us due to their celebratory gift, Jackson and I agreed to discuss the matter further, and I decided to invite him over to our home. I decided it would be best to let him calm down before we talked, so I asked him to wait in the next room. Mr. President, I'm terribly sorry about this. Realizing the situation, Jackson turned pale and apologized to them. Hearing from me about how he had acted the day before and his current attempts to shift the responsibility for the aftermath onto me. He must have realized there was no way to deny or evade the truth. His anger from moments ago gone, he now trembles slightly as he continues to apologize. Jackson? The president's voice was unexpectedly gentle, giving Jackson a glimmer of hope. This is a family matter and not related to the company, so I won't comment as your boss. That's right, we promise it won't affect your job evaluation. But remember, we're Alyssa's friends first and foremost. We'll have to excuse ourselves from any personal interactions with you moving forward. Jackson, who had boasted about his personal ties with them at work, was in disbelief. You can't be serious. Alyssa, say something. Isn't it embarrassing to involve others in a marital dispute? This isn't just a marital dispute. You mishandled the gifts from everyone, losing their personal respect. And frankly, I no longer need a husband who always puts his mother first and blames his wife for his own mistakes. I want a divorce. I felt sorry for involving the two of them in such a scene, but I declared my intentions boldly and left the house. It was the right decision to leave the children with their grandparents, considering it's not good for them to witness arguments. After our divorce, as the news spread throughout the company, Jackson faced various rumors due to the distant behavior of Mr. Jones and the president, whom he had previously been on good terms with. Jackson, who had once boasted about being favored by Mr. Jones and looked down on his colleagues and subordinates, now seems belittled as they mock him for being unable to even make small talk with Mr. Jones without his wife. Although there was some resistance leading up to the divorce, after the separation, he paid child support and met with the children once a month. However, every time they met, the conversation turned to how child support payments were burdensome and how the cost of dry cleaning was too high, always about money. Moreover, by trying to emotionally manipulate the children with tears and suggesting they all live together again, the kids, who were entering their teenage years, gradually began to resist meeting him. Currently, in respect of the children's wishes not to meet, the visits have been temporarily halted. Dad always cared more about Grandma than us. We don't have to live together. Recalling Jackson's reaction to her words still makes me laugh. After making that divorce declaration, I apologized to the president and Mr. Jones, Jackson's boss, and returned the celebratory gift I had kept hidden from Jackson. They accepted the return, and from Mr. Jones. A divorce celebration gift. And with a laugh, he presented me once again with a bottle of my favorite liquor as a gift. Though I regret causing them concern, I believe our relationship, including with my parents, will continue in the future. After the divorce from Jackson was finalized and things settled down, the children and I were invited to a home party at the president's house. There, I was offered a job at the company run by the president's brother. I have been ignoring all the bothersome messages from Jackson. In my new workplace, which is understanding of parenting, I am supported by many people, and we, as a family, are living happily every day.